Thank you very much, guys. I am delighted to be sat here with none other than Boy George.
Hi.
Thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me today.
Welcome.
Have you been enjoying your stint in Ireland for the last couple of days?
Yeah, it's been quite whirlwind, obviously. I arrived yesterday using my Irish passport for the first time.
Delighted.
That was very exciting. I was thinking, wonder if I'll get through, and I breezed through.
Of course you did.
It was great.
Yeah, sure. Who's going to recognise you in the airport? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I wasn't dressed up in the airport, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Incognito. I love it. And
I do get recognised when I'm not dressed up.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine so.
Yeah.
You're an actor.
My voice gives me away.
Okay.
As soon as I open my mouth, people recognise me.
But you're over and back to Ireland a lot. I mean, you grew up in London, but you have Irish parents. What's your connection like here to Ireland? Would you say it influenced you at all coming over and back when you were younger?
Well, my name's O'Dowd, so, you know, growing up in the 70s, having such an Irish name, you were definitely conscious that you weren't, you know, English. Mm-hmm. Although, you know, I think of myself as kind of both. I think probably one of the reasons I'm so interested in culture is because of having that mix of English and Irish culture. So it's always made me fascinated with culture as a kind of theme, you know, whether it's Jamaican culture, Indian culture. You know, I went to India in the 90s. I definitely love, you know, identity, and I think that kind of bleeds into clothes and fashion and all of that.
Well, speaking of which, we're here at Newbridge Silverware for the Chameleon of Style, Boy George. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Well, this is quite like a sort of capsule collection of what I'm going to be doing later on, and it's a collection of really stuff that survived, because, you know, one of the things I always say is that when you're doing something in your teens or in your 20s, you don't really think about the impact that it will have later on, because things that are iconic are only iconic in hindsight. Mm-hmm. Although everybody uses that word now, like everyone's like, I'm iconic. But of course, you know, I remember the first time I ever saw Margaret Thatcher in real life. Now that's iconic.
Okay.
It was like seeing the Eiffel Tower walking through the room. You know, I mean, even I get excited. If I see someone that is iconic in that way, I will always react, because, you know, it's particularly seeing Margaret Thatcher, because it was in the prime of the blue handbag and the whole thing. It was really like, oh my God, look at Thatcher.
It's a moment.
So certain people still excite me. You know, certain people, they don't necessarily have to be really famous, but they can just be someone that I've seen in a movie. Yeah, when I saw you,
said
I was
Austrian,
very
you're
excited.
a huge fan of
very
me.
excited. Yeah, your hair, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought you were Elvis.
But I mean, there's so many incredible pieces here. Do you have one that sort of stands out to you or that's very close to your heart?
Well, obviously the one that my mum made, which is a kind of tartan suit. You know, when I was a kid, I would, like, one of my friends always used to have Vivienne Westwood stuff because they had money, and I would borrow it and get my mum to take a pattern. Because my mum always used to say, I can make that for £5, you know. I'd bring something back and she'd go, how much was that? Jesus, you know, I could buy a 3-piece sofa for that. So my mum was always copying, like, Vivienne Westwood stuff. And there's this one great moment, I was in Paris and I was wearing a pair of bondage trousers that my mum had made, and Vivienne came up and she knew that wasn't hers, you know, and she was like, who made those? And I met my mum, and she gave him a good looking over, and she goes, tell us she did a great job, which my mum loved, because my mum was so fond of saying, how much was that? £70 for 2 pieces of fabric sold
Typical
together.
Irish mother.
So, you know, it was, and my mum was really good at copying things and cutting her own patterns. If she wasn't making someone a wedding dress, she was doing a pair of curtains. You know, you sometimes had to get in the queue to wait to get something made. But it was great. And to have that, you know, if that ends up in a museum somewhere, that would be just so beautiful.
I mean, you have such a connection to a lot of the pieces. I have skinny jeans in my cupboard from 2006 that I'm sure are going to come back into fashion. I can't say goodbye to anything. I'm a hoarder. How are you going to feel? Because a lot of these are going up on auction in Beverly Hills. Is it going to be difficult to say goodbye?
No, I feel like, because I'm going to make more stuff, you know, there's always more things to make. You know, I'm actually not as obsessed with clothes as people think I am. Okay. I do think clothes are fun and they can really help you to tell a story about who you are, but if you don't have a personality, it doesn't really matter what you wear. Because, you know, some people dress up to disguise the fact that they've got nothing to say. Okay. So I feel like, You know, if I see someone wearing something and they don't look comfortable in it, it never works for me. Someone on a catwalk, I think, why do they look so miserable?
Yeah.
You can't wear that and look miserable.
Okay.
You know, like there's this thing in fashion where people walk down the catwalk like they've been forced to wear it. But then you see a John Galliano show and it's so over the top and everyone's like really owning what they're wearing. And I think that is really what fashion is about.
Okay.
But I'm not into fashion snobbery. You know, I feel like who you are as a person is much more important than what you're wearing.
Yeah.
Because we make this mistake nowadays of thinking we can tell somebody what somebody is by what they wear. We live in an age of over-labeling everything, LGBT, Muslim, this, that, the other. And, you know, you cannot tell what someone is from what they're wearing. And this is one of the mistakes we're making in the current culture. Because, you know, you have to live out what you are.
Yeah,
It takes time.
Yeah. It's a way to be creative.
You know, you could be dressed as a priest and be the worst person in the world. It's not enough to have a uniform.
Yeah.
And wearing a glamorous dress doesn't necessarily mean you're glamorous. It's all about your personality. And, you know, I think that's much more important than what people wear.
You've worked with some incredibly creative people through fashion. Our very own Philip Tracy designed some of the hats.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with Philip in terms of creativity and behind the scenes and creating them?
When I met Philip, he actually told me that the reason he wanted to make hats was to meet me. And
Really?
Of course, I thought he was lying.
There was a rumour he wanted to do a thesis on you or something,
You know
wasn't there?
what? I have to say, Philip is one of the most generous people I've ever met. I don't think I've ever paid for a hat. You know,
okay.
A couple of years ago, he gave me this Swarovski hat that was worth like £25,000. And I was like, how much? And he goes, you can have it. And I was like, seriously?
I don't
and
have
I
any
was
friends like that.
And he said, Jamiroquai wanted it, and I've given it to you. And I said to him at the time, whenever you want this back, if you need to show it, obviously it's yours. But yeah, I just think he's brilliant and such a talented man, you know, and, you know, I'm always like marveled by what he does. Because I'm also, you know, someone who likes making things. I do art, and a lot of my art is influenced by, you know, millinery and fashion and all of those things. So yeah, he's just brilliant.
You mentioned icons at the beginning of the interview. It's safe to say that you are indeed an 80s icon. Culture Club music today still stands up some absolute bangers. Would you say the music scene has changed much in the last couple of decades? I mean, what was it like in the 80s when you first started out?
I think people have a very different relationship with music now because you've got it on your phone. You know, when I was a kid, you had to go to the record store. You relied on the guy working in the shop to tell you what was hip. You know, it was really exciting. There were certain shops you went to and there was like, oh, you got to hear this and this is coming from this place. So I think it's different now. But I also think that there's always exciting music. You know, it's, I love music and I still get excited about hearing new things. You know, I still listen to Release Radar and I like to know what's going on. And I make a lot of music myself.
Yeah.
You know, I write every day, pretty much, especially now with AI. I don't have to work with a musician, which is brilliant.
Okay, you use a lot of that?
1000%,
Okay.
more than probably people realise. And removing the gatekeepers is so exciting for a creative person because, you know, when you are writing, you don't want someone over your shoulder saying this will never get played on radio. You can't say that.
Yeah.
So now I have absolute freedom. Doesn't mean I don't work with musicians, but it means I decide what I make. And, you know, as I said last night, I'm going to release an album soon called Fear of an AI Planet. And I'm not singing on it. It's really about my writing. And it's very, very eclectic, from indie to, you know, reggae to classic to everything.
Amazing.
And that's a freedom that was not afforded to any artist before. So people say, like, AI will make you lazy. Well, only if you are lazy. For me, it's made me much more, you know, excited.
I'm sure there'll be fans all over the country equally excited as well. boygeorge, thank you very much for
welcome.
talking to me today.
Absolutely.
It was an absolute
Cheers.
pleasure. Back to you in the studio, guys.
You can do this. You can do this. Let me help you get through this. Like to this. do this.